Ever think about, like, what would you do if you woke up one morning and the internet was just gone?
Oh, yeah.
Like, no news,
Right.
no social media, no way to connect with family or friends or anybody.
Yeah.
This is actually a scenario that's playing out more and more around the world.
It is.
These are called internet shutdowns, and today we're going to be doing a deep dive into what you need to know
Absolutely.
about internet shutdown.
It's a stark reality, and you know, it's not some distant dystopian fiction.
Right.
You know, in 2024 alone,
Yeah.
these shutdowns cost the global economy a staggering $7.69 billion,
wow.
affecting 648.4 million people across 28 countries.
Those are some really eye-opening numbers.
Yeah.
So I guess before we get into how to navigate these situations,
Right.
I think maybe we should sort of define what we're dealing with here.
Okay.
What exactly constitutes an internet shutdown?
Well, it's a broad term.
Okay.
It can be anything from a complete blackout where internet access is totally severed to something that's more targeted, like blocking specific social media platforms.
So it could be kind of like a range.
Yeah, it's a spectrum.
Yes, technically.
Okay.
And I guess where are these shutdowns happening?
Yeah, so Pakistan was hit the hardest
Okay.
economically in 2024.
Great.
But we're also seeing this trend in places like Iran, Gabon, Cuba, and even concerns in Zimbabwe, particularly during times of political unrest.
It's kind of unsettling to think that something we take for granted,
Yeah.
you know, the internet could be so easily controlled.
It can be very easy.
So what's driving this? I mean,
Yeah.
is there sort of a common thread here?
So while governments often cite the need to curb misinformation or maintain order, a lot of times these shutdowns are strategically employed to stifle dissent and control the
Oh, wow.
especially during protests or elections.
Okay.
For example, during the 2019
Yeah.
Bloody November protests in Iran, the government imposed a complete internet blackout for 9 days.
9 days.
Yeah.
Wow, that's hard to even imagine.
A long time.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe let's shift gears a little bit here.
Okay.
And talk about what we can do to prepare for and potentially even overcome these shutdowns.
Sure.
What are some practical strategies that we take?
So the most crucial thing is to be proactive.
Okay.
You want to have these tools and knowledge ready before a shutdown occurs.
Okay, so what are some of the essential tools that we should have in our arsenal?
Right.
I know people talk a lot about VPN, but is that really the silver bullet?
So VPNs can be very effective.
Okay.
They encrypt your connection and route it through a server in another location, making it harder for governments to track your activity or block websites.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like creating a secret tunnel for your internet traffic.
Exactly.
Okay, but what's to stop a government from just blocking VPNs altogether during a shutdown?
They can try, but a lot of VPN providers are constantly developing workarounds.
Okay.
The key is to have a reputable VPN downloaded and ready to go before a shutdown.
Okay.
And it's important to understand that even with a VPN, there are no guarantees.
Right, so it's not like a foolproof solution,
Correct.
but a good first line of defense.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some other options, especially if a VPN fails or is blocked?
So that's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
Remember the Tor network?
Yeah.
It's a free open source system that allows for anonymous communication.
Okay.
This is particularly valuable in high censorship countries.
Tor, right?
Yeah.
I've heard of it, but I always thought that that was something only used by,
Right.
hackers and activists.
Yeah, while Tor is certainly used in those circles, its applications are much broader.
Okay.
It can be a lifeline for anyone seeking to bypass censorship and act information.
So if VPNs are blocked, Tor could be a backup.
Exactly. It's about having layers of protection and multiple strategies. And there are even ways to communicate without relying on the internet at all.
Wait, really? Tell me more about that.
So one approach is using mesh networks.
Yeah.
Apps like BridgeFi and FireChat use Bluetooth to create a decentralized network between devices.
Okay.
This means you can communicate with people nearby even when traditional internet infrastructure is unavailable.
Oh, wow.
These are often used during protests or in disaster zones.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like creating your own little mini internet bubble.
Exactly.
Are there any limitations with these meth networks, though?
So the range is limited, usually only extending as far as your Bluetooth signal.
Okay.
And it only works if the people you need to communicate with also have the app installed.
Right, so it's good for localized communication in a pin.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there are even more old school methods like what we call sneakernet.
Okay.
Literally carrying data on physical devices like USB drives.
Sneakernet.
Yeah.
I love that term.
Yeah.
It sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It is.
It might seem archaic, but I guess it can be surprisingly effective,
It can.
especially for moving large files.
Yeah.
Okay.
But let's talk about a tool that, while considered outdated by some, is experiencing a surprising resurgence.
Oh?
Shortwave radio.
Shortwave radio.
Yeah.
Is this the same thing my grandparents used to listen to?
You got it.
Wow.
And it's proving to be a valuable resource for accessing news and information, especially in regions with limited internet access or during shutdown.
Really? I never would have guessed that shortwave radio would be relevant in the digital age.
Right.
What makes it so effective in these situations?
So shortwave signals can travel vast distances, even across continents, and are incredibly difficult to jam.
Wow.
This makes them resistant to censorship and provides a reliable way to access information from outside sources.
So it's like a lifeline to the outside world world when other forms of communication are cut off?
Exactly.
I'm starting to see why it's making a comeback.
So before we dig into shortwave radio, I wanted to touch on a couple more digital strategies.
Okay.
You know, we mentioned mesh network for localized communication.
Right.
But what about when you need to share information more broadly?
Right.
Especially in areas with limited internet access.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Mesh networks are great for connecting with people nearby.
Yeah.
But they don't solve the problem of accessing, news or information from the outside.
Exactly. And that's where platforms designed for low bandwidth environments.
Okay.
Think of it as a kind of internet leap built for resilient, challenging.
Internet.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So these platforms, they strip away all the bells and whistles of the modern internet and focus on delivering essential information in a compact, text-based format.
Okay.
This means they can function even on very slow or intermittent actions.
So it's like going back to the early days of the internet.
Yeah.
Before we had streaming video and fan graphic.
You could say that, but the technology behind it is actually quite sophisticated. It's about prioritizing efficiency and accessibility.
Right. I can see how that would be incredibly valuable in places where internet access is unreliable or heavily censored.
Absolutely. And these platforms are often used by journalists, activists, NGOs to disseminate information in challenging environments.
Okay, so we've got VPNs, Tor mesh networks, these low bandwidth platforms. Anything else that we should kind of have in our toolkit?
There is one more option worth considering, especially for travelers or those living in regions prone to shutdown.
A roaming SIM card from a neighboring country. It's not the most budget-friendly solution, but it can provide access to an unaffected network.
That's a good tip, especially for people who need to connect it, for work or personal.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's shift gears now and talk about this unexpected comeback of shortwave radio. You mentioned earlier that it's proving to be a valuable resource for accessing news and information during shutdown.
It is, and it's a testament to the enduring power of simple, robust technology. Shortwave signals, as we discussed, can travel thousands of miles and are notoriously difficult to block or jam.
It's like the radio equivalent of a message in a bottle.
It is.
Able to reach the most remote corners of the world. But isn't shortwave radio a bit outdated? Don't you need one of those bulky, old-fashioned radios with all the dials and the antennas to listen?
Not necessarily. Technology has advanced, and there are now much more modern and accessible ways to tune in. One option is using a software-defined radio, or SDR. It's essentially a computer-based radio that can receive a wide range of frequencies, including shortwave.
So instead of a physical radio, you can just use software on your computer or your smartphone.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
It is, and there are tons of free and open source SDR applications available online.
That sounds relatively easy to set up. Are there any other options for listening to shortwave?
Of course, you can still find portable shortwave radios. Much smaller and more user-friendly than their predecessors, with features like digital tuning and memory presets. They're readily available online and at electronic stores.
So whether you're tech-savvy or prefer a more traditional approach, there's a way for you to tap into the world of shortwave radio. Okay, but how do you actually find the stations you're looking for? It sounds like trying to navigate this vast ocean of radio waves.
It can be a bit daunting.
Shortwave frequencies can be fickle and stations change their schedules, but there are resources available to help navigate the world. So websites like Shortwave Schedule provide comprehensive listings of broadcasts worldwide, including frequency, times, and language. It's like a TV guide for shortwave radio. There are also smartphone apps that offer similar information.
So finding the stations is managed. Okay, but what about actually understanding the content? Aren't a lot of these broadcasts in languages other than English?
That's true. Many broadcasts are in local language, but you'd be surprised by the number of international broadcasters like the World Service or Voice of America that provide news and information in English and other wide languages.
They're trying to reach a global audience. Okay. But I remember reading that some Western media outlets, including the BBC, have actually been scaling back their shortwave broadcasting in recent years. What's the reason for that?
So like many media organizations, they've been shifting their focus to digital platforms, believing them to be the future of information dissemination.
But isn't that creating kind of a gap for people in regions with limited internet access?
It is.
They're the ones who rely most heavily on shortwave radio for news and information.
Precisely, and it's a point worth pondering. While the internet has become an essential tool for many, it's crucial to remember that vast populations still lack reliable access.
And those are often the populations that are most vulnerable to information control and censorship.
You're absolutely right, and it creates an opportunity for others to fill that void.
Wait a minute. You're not about to tell me that Russia is stepping up its shortwave game, are you?
Well, it's not exactly a secret, as some Western media outlets have reduced their shortwave presence. Russia has been actively expanding its broadcast, particularly targeting areas where independent media is scarce.
So it sounds like shortwave radio is becoming this new battleground in the fight for information control.
It's a fascinating dynamic.
It is.
Highlighting the strategic importance of seemingly outdated technologies in the current information landscape.
It's a reminder that we can't always predict where the next solution or challenge will emerge.
Right.
Sometimes the answers lie in the past, in technologies that have stood the test of time.
That's a great point, and it underscores the importance of being resourceful and open to exploring all available options.
So while shortwave radio might seem like a relic of a bygone era, it's actually a powerful tool for accessing news and information in a world where internet freedom is increasingly under threat.
Exactly. It's a testament to the resilience of information and the human desire to stay connected no matter the obstacle.
Yeah.
But it's not just about having the tools.
Right.
It's about knowing how to use them effectively.
Right. It's about being prepared, having a plan.
Yeah.
Knowing where to turn for reliable information. And for anyone new to the world of shortwave radio, it's about being patient, curious, and willing to experiment.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
It's about being proactive and taking control of your information access rather than being at the mercy of those.
Well said. This has been an incredibly insightful exploration of how to navigate the challenges of internet shutdowns.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture? What are the implications of these internet shutdowns, on a larger scale?
Right. Critical question.
Yeah. And what can we do to kind of push back against this trend?
Remember those figures we discussed earlier? $7.69 billion lost to the global economy in 2024.
Yeah, that's a huge number.
And that's just the economic impact.
Right.
Think about the disruption to education, healthcare, political activism, countless other areas of life that rely on a free and open internet.
Easy to just think about, oh, I can't check my social media.
Right.
But,
it goes way.
The reality is that these shutdowns have much larger consequences.
Exactly. They disproportionately impact vulnerable populations. They limit access to essential services.
Yeah.
And they stifle democratic participation.
So it's not just about, being able to stay connected. It's about protecting fundamental rights and freedoms.
It is.
So what can be done to address this on a global level?
Right.
I mean, is it even possible to hold governments accountable for these actions?
It's a complex challenge.
Yeah.
But there are organizations working tirelessly to advocate for internet freedom and hold those in power responsible.
We mentioned Access Now and NetBlocks already.
Right.
What are some other groups that are kind of leading the charge on?
There are many, including the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Committee to Protect Journalists, Reporters Without Borders. They're doing vital work monitoring internet shutdowns, documenting their impact, pushing for policy changes that protect our rights.
Well, it's good to know that there are people out there dedicated to this fight.
It is.
But what can we as individuals do beyond, just staying informed?
Right.
It can feel so overwhelming. Like, where do you even start?
You'd be surprised by the impact individuals can have. Supporting these organizations is crucial. Donating, volunteering, even just amplifying their message on social media.
So even small actions can contribute to the bigger movement.
Absolutely. Spreading awareness.
Okay.
Talk to your friends, family, colleagues. Share information about the tools we've discussed and the organizations fighting for change.
Right.
The more people understand the stakes, the more pressure we can exert on government to prioritize internet freedom.
So it's about shifting the narrative.
Exactly.
Making it clear that this isn't just a tech issue.
Right.
This is a human rights issue.
Exactly. And remember, the tools and strategies we've discussed for individual preparedness are part of this larger fight. By taking control of our own information access, we're contributing to a more resilient and open internet for everyone.
Yeah, powerful reminder that we're not powerless in the face of these challenges.
Right.
We can be prepared.
We can.
We can be informed.
We can.
And we can be part of a collective movement for change.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a fight worth fighting, and every voice matters.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of internet shutdowns.
Yeah.
It's been a sobering but ultimately empowering conversation.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listeners, stay curious, stay connected, and keep fighting for a free and open internet.